The lawyer slid a single key across the table and said, "There's a storage facility in Millhaven. Your husband paid the lease through 2031. You're the sole owner now." I stared at that key for a long moment. It was small, ordinary. The kind of key that opens a padlock at a storage unit you rent when you move between apartments. But my husband Daniel didn't move between apartments. Daniel had a house. Our house. The house we shared for 6 years. The house where I made coffee every morning and waited for him to come home from his contracting work. The house where I thought I knew every single thing about the man I married. He had never once mentioned a storage unit. "How long?" I asked. The lawyer, a thin man named Mr. Aldrich who wore reading glasses on a chain, checked his papers. "The lease began 9 years ago, 3 years before your marriage." I picked up the key. My sister-in-law, Claudia, was sitting to my left. She had insisted on coming to the reading, said it was to support me. She leaned over the moment Mr. Aldrich looked back down at his files and whispered, "Whatever's in there, we should go through it together. You don't want to be alone when you open something like that." I nodded. I said, "Of course." But I was already deciding that I would go alone. Daniel died 11 days before that meeting. A pulmonary embolism, sudden, without warning, the kind of thing the doctor described with words like unpredictable, and nothing could have been done. He was 36 years old. We had been married for 6 years. And in 6 years of marriage, through every argument and vacation and quiet Sunday morning, he had never told me about a storage unit in a town 40 minutes from our house. The drive home from the lawyer's office was quiet. Claudia rode with me because her husband, my brother-in-law Ray, had dropped us both off. She sat in the passenger seat with her hands folded in her lap and talked about logistics, the estate, the accounts, whether I had thought about what I was going to do with Daniel's truck. "What about the storage unit?" I finally said. She paused just a half-second too long. "We'll figure it out." "You knew about it." "Elena." "Claudia." I kept my eyes on the road. "You knew about it. You didn't look surprised when Aldrich mentioned it. Not even a little." She turned toward the window. "Daniel asked me not to say anything." "To me?" "Yes." I didn't say another word until I pulled into her driveway and let her out. She stood on the curb and looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully read, something between guilt and calculation, and said, "Just wait a few days before you go. You're still grieving. You don't want to walk into something like that alone." I smiled at her. "I'll call you," I said. I drove directly to Millhaven. The Millhaven self-storage facility was on the edge of town, the kind of industrial block of orange doors and concrete that you pass on a highway and never think about. I pulled in at 4 in the afternoon, with the September light going flat and golden across the lot. A bored teenager at the front desk checked the unit number on my key tag, Unit 114, and pointed me toward the back row. My hands were steady. I was surprised by that. Unit 114 was at the very end of the last row, set slightly apart from the others, larger than the standard units. The padlock was heavy and well-maintained. The key turned cleanly. I pulled up the rolling door. It wasn't what I expected. I don't know exactly what I expected. Boxes, maybe. Old furniture. The kind of accumulated debris that people store because they can't bring themselves to throw things away. Instead, the unit was clean and organized. Metal shelving lined both walls. On one side, filing boxes, all labeled, all dated. On the other side, a workbench with tools arranged neatly on a pegboard. And at the back, against the far wall, a corkboard, floor to ceiling, covered in photographs, documents, handwritten notes, and strings of red thread connecting points like something out of a detective show. I walked toward it slowly. The photographs were of a man I didn't recognize. Late 50s, heavy-set, gray at the temples. In some photos he was alone. In others he was with people I also didn't recognize. In one photograph, taken from a distance with a long lens, he was shaking hands with someone outside what looked like a government building. Someone had written a name at the bottom in Daniel's handwriting. Marcus Howell. I didn't know that name. But pinned below the photograph was a newspaper clipping from 8 years ago. A financial fraud case, charges dropped due to insufficient evidence. A contractor, a real estate developer who had walked away clean. I stood there for a long time, reading. I went back the next morning. And the morning after that, the filing boxes contained years of careful, meticulous documentation. Bank records, property transfers, contractor invoices, photographs, recorded phone calls transcribed by hand. Daniel had been building something in this room for 9 years. Not a hobby, not an obsession, a case. Marcus Howell, I learned from those boxes, was the man who had employed Daniel's father, a small subcontracting firm in eastern Pennsylvania, and then systematically defrauded him. Overbilled, undercut, and eventually drove the company into bankruptcy. Daniel's father had died 2 years after the business collapsed, a heart attack at 61 that Daniel always believed was connected to the stress of losing everything he had built. Daniel had spent 9 years quietly gathering evidence that the authorities had never found, or that Howell had made sure they never found. I found a letter in the third filing box, tucked into an envelope with my name on it. Elena, if you're reading this, something happened to me before I was ready. I'm sorry, I should have told you. I was going to tell you when it was finished, when there was nothing left for you to worry about. I didn't want to put any of this on you while it was still dangerous. Howell still has connections. People who owe him things. I didn't want you in his line of sight. Everything in this unit is real. Every document is sourced and verified. Take it to the FBI field office in Philadelphia, ask for Agent Renner. She already knows part of this story. Don't go to local law enforcement. Don't tell anyone before you go. I'm sorry I kept this from you. I thought I was protecting you. Maybe I was wrong about the method, but I was never wrong about the reason. I love you, Daniel. I sat on the concrete floor of that storage unit and I read that letter 4 times. Then I thought about Claudia, about how she had known, about how quickly she had suggested we go through the unit together, about how her husband Ray had done commercial real estate development for the past 15 years. I drove back to the facility the following morning with my phone and photographed every single document in every single filing box. It took 4 hours. My back ached. I didn't stop. When I got home, there was a voicemail from Claudia. Elena, honey, I've been thinking. Whatever Daniel had stored in that unit, I'm sure it was just personal stuff, sentimental things. You know how he was. Ray and I would be happy to help you go through it and deal with whatever needs to be cleared out. We could come this weekend. Just let us help you. I played the message twice. Then I called my friend Jessie, who had been a paralegal for 8 years and knew how to be discreet, and asked her to come over. Jessie arrived in an hour. I showed her everything, the photos I had taken, Daniel's letter, the newspaper clipping. She sat at my kitchen table and scrolled through my phone in silence for a long time. Elena, she finally said. I know. This is not a small thing. I know. Ray does real estate development. I know, Jessie. She set the phone down. Does Claudia know what's actually in that unit, or does she just know that Daniel had one? That was the question I had been turning over for 2 days. I think she knows enough to be scared of what's in it. Whether she knows exactly what Daniel was building, I'm not sure. But someone told her to get access to it. Ray. Or someone above Ray. Jessie was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You cannot tell Claudia you've already photographed everything. You cannot let her or Ray near that unit. And you need to move faster than they're expecting you to. I called Agent Renner's office the next morning. I gave the receptionist my name and said I was calling about a case involving Marcus Howell and that I had documentation. I was on hold for 6 minutes. When Agent Renner picked up, she didn't say hello. She said, Where did you get that name? My husband left it for me, I said. Daniel Voss. He's been building a file on Howell for 9 years. Daniel passed away 11 days ago. I have everything he collected. There was a pause. A long one. Mrs. Voss, she said carefully, can you come to Philadelphia? Yes, I said, but I need to ask you something first. Do you know a man named Raymond Holt? He does commercial real estate in eastern Pennsylvania. Another pause. Shorter this time. Where are you right now? My house. Don't go anywhere. I'm sending someone to you today. 2 agents arrived that afternoon. They were professional and quiet, and they sat at my kitchen table and went through everything, the photos on my phone, Daniel's letter, the original documents at the storage facility, which they accompanied me to that same evening. One of them photographed the corkboard for 20 minutes while the other one worked through the filing boxes with gloves. Your husband did exceptional work, the first agent told me. She said it plainly, without drama, the way someone states a fact. This fills in gaps we've had for years. He never told me, I said. He was protecting you. I know. I looked at the corkboard. At all of it, 9 years of careful, patient, solitary work. I just wish he had let me decide whether I needed protecting. She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, He got it done. That matters. Claudia called 3 more times that week. The 3rd time I answered. I've been worried about you, she said. You went quiet. Are you okay? I'm okay, I said. I went through the storage unit. Silence. There was a lot in there. I continued. Personal things, documents. It's going to take a while to sort through everything legally. My attorney says it could be complicated. Your attorney? Her voice shifted, something tightened in it. Elena, you don't need to make this complicated. It's just a storage unit. Ray and I could help you clear it out in an afternoon. You wouldn't have to deal with any of it. Claudia, I said. I know. She went quiet. I don't know exactly how much you know, I said. I don't know if Ray kept you in the dark about the details, but I know you didn't come to that lawyer's office to support me. And I know that Daniel didn't ask you to keep his secret so that you could hand it to your husband. Elena, you're misunderstanding. I'm not. I heard her breath on the line. Something complicated happening on the other end of the call that I couldn't fully see. Whatever Daniel had in there, she finally said, quietly. Ray said it could cause problems for a lot of people. He said it needed to be handled carefully. It is being handled carefully, I said, just not by Ray. I hung up. 4 months later, Marcus Howell was indicted on federal charges, wire fraud, conspiracy, and 3 counts related to the obstruction of the original investigation 8 years ago. Ray was named as a person of interest in the ongoing investigation. He hired a lawyer the same week. Claudia sent me one text message. It said, I didn't know how deep it went. I swear to you. I read it. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure what the truth was. And I wasn't sure it mattered yet. Maybe someday I would want to untangle it. Maybe someday I would want to understand exactly how much she knew and when she knew it. But that day, I just set my phone face down on the kitchen counter and made myself a cup of coffee and stood at the window. Daniel had spent 9 years in a storage unit 40 minutes from our house, building something he believed in. He had done it quietly and carefully and alone because he thought the alternative was dangerous, and maybe he was right about that. Maybe if I had known, I would have become a target. Maybe his silence was genuinely the thing that kept me safe. Or maybe he should have trusted me. Maybe we could have done it together, and he wouldn't have carried it alone for so long, and the weight of it wouldn't have pressed down on him every single day of our marriage without me even knowing it was there. I didn't have an answer to that. I was 29 years old, and I was a widow, and the man I loved had kept a whole second world running parallel to our life together, not out of deception, but out of devotion to something he believed I deserved to be protected from. I didn't know whether to be grateful or heartbroken. Most days I was both. What I knew was this: he had finished it. Across 9 years and hundreds of hours and one carefully maintained storage unit at the edge of a small town, Daniel had built something solid enough that it held even after he was gone. He had handed it to me without knowing he was doing it. And I had carried it the rest of the way. That felt like a partnership, even if it came too late to feel like one while he was alive. I picked up my phone. I found the contact I had saved as Agent Renner, FBI Philadelphia, and I sent her a short message. Just wanted to say thank you. For taking the call. For taking it seriously. She replied 4 minutes later. Your husband took it seriously first. You just made sure it counted. I set the phone down and finished my coffee. Outside, the November light was thin and pale over the backyard. Daniel had always meant to re-landscape. The yard he had made plans for, drawn rough sketches of on graph paper, talked about on Sunday mornings. One more thing he hadn't gotten to finish. I thought maybe I would start on it in the spring. Not to complete his vision exactly, I would make it my own. But I would use the graph paper sketches as a starting point, because they were his, and because starting points matter. I had learned that much, at least, from a padlock key and a corkboard and a storage unit full of 9 years of quiet, stubborn love.